Hello guys, and welcome to a new Wargame Red Dragon video today by me, Vulcan. Today I have for you a 4 versus 4 on Snake Pit, and in this one I'm going to be using a 1980s USA deck. Now everybody in the game was also using 1980s decks. It was a requirement in the lobby, just to keep things even. But today on my team I'm going to be joined by Holly Holman, Kaiser Rondal and Taki. And on the opposing team, we have Ollie Bowl, Crow Warrior, Gen Jeff, make sure to go check out his awesome YouTube channel, and Stashman. So, we're going to be using a good old USA deck, and of course, it's going to be led by the glorious and OG M1 Abrams. They're going to be leading the charge, backed up by a couple of the M163 Vulcans, represent. Then we have the LVTP7s there with the US Marines. We've got the M727 Ihawk, which is a long-range radar AA. And then we've got two M48 Chaparrals, which are shorter range infrared AA. And then we've got the M901 ITVs, which are long-range ATGMs anti-ground. Over on the left-hand side here, I've got a little bit of an air contingent at the start. We've got a couple of Chinooks with Delta Force, going to be escorted by two AH-1J Cobras and an AH-1S Cobra. The AH-1J Cobras have a grenade launcher, whilst the AH-1S has a minigun. And of course the AH-1J Cobras there do have the recon capability. The Chinooks, they're almost bumping into each other at the start there, but they're going to be heading all the way up to Lima in order to put some pressure on with the Delta Force early on. At least that was the hope. On my right here, I do have Holly. He's going to be pushing into Delta and then to Echo. We have Kaiser Rondal, who's going to be taking Bravo and pushing up to Hotel probably. And then we've got Taki, who's going to be pushing up the right flank there. So in we go. Chinooks are arriving, going to be getting them to land. The H1 Cobra is just going to be holding ground above and having a good look for enemy units at the start. We do briefly spot an absolute convoy of units coming up from Stashman, but I don't really have any like ATGMs to kill tanks, and the rockets aren't too great at dealing with them. The rockets here from the H1J Cobras and the H1S Cobras are really good for just smashing infantry at the start, and I guess pinning down larger groups of units, but not something like a load of tanks. So yeah, whilst they will probably do some damage, well, there's a bunch of AA there as well. So my AH-1J Cobra goes down, my AH-1S Cobra's going to do a runner. Do have some artillery coming into our base at the start, somebody going for a cheeky arty snipe at the start there. But of course my leader was not on this ridge, so that was just as well. Going to be sending my Chinooks back to base. I was kind of hoping to use them as future infantry transport, but the Chinooks are pretty slow to land, so they're not fantastic for shipping units to the front line. Like if you had a bunch of units come in with trucks like M35s like I do with my recon here, you could potentially unload them and then put them into the Chinooks and then use the Chinooks to get them to the front line quicker. But in this case, I didn't really get around to using that. So my Delta Force here, they are going to be getting off one of their rockets, but they immediately come under fire by the absolute crazy amount of forces here from Stashman. We're going to get annihilated by the tanks. The ZSDs are going to start to engage the LVTP7s, and my US Marines also going to be coming under fire. I do have my Abrams here though. They're going to be pushing across the open ground and starting to pick off some of these APCs. Gotta love that graphic there, looks so cool. They're now pushing out over towards the Chonma Hos. These Chonma Hos, they're okay little tanks, but not as good as the mighty M1 Abrams, of course, so we're able to take them out with a couple of shots. My Abrams just having a complete turkey shoot here at the start of the game. Slowly moving forwards on their attack move orders. Got the Vulcan coming in to back them up against any helicopters that might potentially show up. Also taking out that tank up on the ridge. There's so many of these Chonma-Hos. Unfortunately, all my infantry did get wiped, though. The US Marines going down there, the Delta Force, of course, going down. The Suzong-Po managed just to pick off my poor Vulcan. But the M1 Abrams going to be trying to get one back. We've got to deal with these Chonma-Hos, of course. Oh, well, there goes my Vulcan to enemy artillery. M1 Abrams taking a little bit of a shot there from the HGM. My HGM's on the ridge also helping out. Just a glorious engagement at the start of this game. Gotta love some classic tank-on-tank warfare. Artillery coming over, making things very difficult for this center M1 Abrams, keeping it panicked the whole time. Ah, of course, as I did bring in a Thunderbolt. I mean, how could I not? Takes a lot of shots from the enemy AA and is tasked to get out of there. Yeah, all of the Abrams survived the initial engagement, which was really good. But I am going to have to back off since I don't really have any eyes on what's ahead of me. My ITV up on the ridge here, trying to get a sweet shot onto the BMP-1, but missing most of its shots, unfortunately. I did actually bring this in up-vetted. It did have, I think, yeah, 3 chevrons of veterancy. I was hoping it was a little bit more accurate, because they're supposed to be pretty accurate base. They've gotten 60% accuracy, so with the 3 chevrons, they go up to like 80%. So the fact I was missing was quite unfortunate. There we go. Anyway, more M1 Abrams on the way with the Vulcan there. Admittedly, I probably could have done with a little bit more infantry to just kind of be my front line, but my infantry in this particular deck I think was relatively expensive generally due to the LVTP-7s and the US Marines. Those were like my best infantry, and I had quite a lot of them. But I'm going to have to move the ITV off the hill here because it does come under artillery fire, and then I've got the Rangers are having to move off there as well because of them being in the same position, basically. So just moving them up to the ridge to see if we can get spots onto any other vehicles in the area. I've got another unit arranged on this side, which is providing my recon there. Another AH-1J Cobra coming in on the left-hand side. I was hoping to scout around. At the start of this game, I've basically been artied all the way through. So yeah, my plan was to bring up an AH-1J Cobra that could try and sneak around the edge and get line of sight onto their artillery, and then what I could do is use a Thunderbolt or something to destroy them. My Eagle here trying to have a go at that MiG-21 in the distance there with one of its radar missiles. Doesn't quite get the job done. What a beautiful aircraft though. I didn't have any Tomcats in my USA deck, which I guess is a blasphemy to some of you, but the Eagle is still a very, very cool aircraft, and definitely much better for the period, in my opinion, for its general air engagements. So I'm bringing in a second Eagle behind that one, just so that we have the left side of the map here covered when I finally decide to bring in the good old A-10 Thunderbolt. So this is absolute classic 1980s war porn right here. It really, really is. Just Thunderbolts, M1 Abrams, Eagles, all the good stuff. And this looking for a line straight towards the enemy artillery. And you can see the honey helmet is also going to be pinging the crap out of that because it is really, really annoying. They're just constantly trying to RT our CVs throughout the game. So the H1J Cobra is sneaking around the side here. Another one of the beautiful US units. A little bit of AA, AAA. Going to be stunning my Thunderbolt there, but that's okay for me because the Thunderbolt does have armor. So barely took any damage, just needs to recover from being panicked, and it should be absolutely fine. Eagle's going to be trying to cover the Thunderbolt as Genjeff comes in there with the MiG-21 to try and shoot it down. Literally just going to be up to these F-15A Eagles to take down any aircraft that go for the Thunderbolt. I'm even going to have the Thunderbolt try and hit the F-7B directly. There is a ZSU there being brought in from the spawn. Unfortunately, that is going to be enough to take down the AH-1J Cobra. So, got to try and spot these quickly. But the AH-1J goes down just as I briefly spot the artillery. And, well, that's mission failure, unfortunately. It was a nice attempt, I think, to get around the side here, but in the end, just really couldn't make it work. If I could have got the Thunderbolt onto those artillery pieces, it would have made things a lot easier throughout the rest of the game, but alas, we now had to deal with it for pretty much the rest of the game, because I didn't really have any long-range artillery to potentially counter battery, and not really any decent forces that would be able to sneak through the left-hand side here and maybe go for like HGM shots or something like that onto those units. So my Eagles are going to have to get out of there. I did try and like evac all of my planes here, but unfortunately I kind of forgot about one of the F-15s, so two MiG-21s going to come in here, completely overwhelm my Eagle, and that gets taken down by Genjeff. So a nice job by him to spot that and take it out. The two MiGs here, very cool aircraft as well. I really do like those MiG-21s. A lot of the units in this period are very, very cool. More artillery coming over. Thankfully not really hitting too much. And I'm just continuing to line up the Abrams ready for a strong push into Lima or Echo. Now I'm also bringing up my own artillery now. I do have the M106A2 mortars. These do have a solid 4 HE power, so relatively strong, and en masse can really do quite a lot of damage to enemy tanks. Like even these T-80s over here that you can see on the ridge. These are pretty strong tanks on the Soviet side, but you can still do quite a lot of damage with these mortars, for example, if you hit accurately enough. So going to be using them there to hit the T-80s as much as I can, just to do as much damage as I can. And you can see they are chipping the health of those T-80s at the bottom here. You'll see the health when I hover over them. And that's all I really need to do, just push them off the ridge there, keep doing damage to them, panic them, so that if I ever go forwards for the engagement with the M1 Abrams, the T-80s will have a rate of fire penalty. That is what happens when they get panicked, and therefore my units will have an advantage. So the M106s are really what I'm going to have to use there to try and break down some of the defenses around Lima and Echo so that I can push across here. Also, of course, those mortars can provide smoke, but as is a bad habit that I have in Wargame, I always forget to use smoke, so I guess we probably won't be seeing much of that. Two more Abrams on the way to back us up. And I was just getting like a line of Abrams in here, mainly so that I could kind of counteract any large armor push that came over again from Stashman, because his tanks are much cheaper than mine are. So even though we killed quite a lot of vehicles at the start on this side, in the grand scheme of things, it probably didn't affect his positioning too much, as he would have been able to have like a bunch of tanks like behind that ridge or whatever. Now, of course, that's what my thinking was. He might not have had anything else there after the initial engagement, but I didn't really have enough infantry to keep pushing forwards, and I guess that was something that was missing quite a lot throughout the game. And on this right-hand side, Taki's doing an okay job of getting some positioning, but isn't really taking too much ground. Loads of albatrosses now coming in, and the dolphins as well. Big old bombing strike coming in here from all these aircraft. They're going to be bombing these leopards to death, or at least trying. None of those really went down either. That's really bad. MiG-21 coming in with the rockets there. Oh, beautiful. These things are just so awesome when they use those rockets against stuff on the ground there. That one's going to get out. MiG-23 OMLs are going straight for the Mirage F1Cs. Oh, manages to shoot one down with its front gun. That's not something you see too terribly often. On the left-hand side, meanwhile, I'm just still getting artied. F4E Phantom coming in. Can they get the job done? Doesn't look like it. Another of the cool aircraft. Right, the Leopard's going to be engaging some of this infantry here. On the right-hand side, Taki's still trying to make ground regardless. Venture probably had no penetration onto the Leopard. Gonna need some more AA on that side though, that's for sure. With the amount of aircraft coming out. I do have a Sheridan moving up here. I do have some of these Sheridans. And they're okay. They can provide like reasonable HGM support to back up the M1 Abrams, and that was kind of the plan. On the left-hand side there, just trying to pop any units that try and get a little bit too aggressive. I knew that my opponent had put some units into this area, but I never really planned to go into this village. I just wanted to push across into Echo potentially and gain some ground here instead. And with Holly's Leopard 2s up on the ridge here, I was hoping that maybe I could make a little bit of ground, but then I noticed that my Abrams were getting really low on fuel. So I had to pull them back for the time being, and it allowed me to escape the T-80s. And so, yeah, just going to wait on the Super Chinook to come with its supply, and that'll be able to resupply all of the fuel and so on. Meanwhile, my HGM's having a go trying to pop a couple of these T-80s, but constantly missing again. I was getting pretty unlucky with these HGMs, honestly. These ITOs are generally pretty reliable, but my M901 certainly not making that the case. So the M106 is there, going to be trying to mortar the T-80s. Missing this time around because of the HGMs forcing them back previously. Here comes the Super Chinook to resupply all these Abrams. I've got a lovely set of Abrams over here, look at them. All lined up, ready to go. Just down in this sort of dip here. Brought up some infantry finally to lead the charge, but maybe a little bit preemptive there. They get absolutely wrecked by the T-80s as the Abrams are sat back here getting refueled. See, I absolutely drain this Super Chinook. But I get my M1 Abrams more or less enough fuel to get the job done. So off they go again. It's time for a second charge, and the T-80s going to be taking that mortar fire, just trying to make them panicked best I can. So that the Abrams have the advantage, and here we go again. Another charge for the Abrams. I managed to take out one of them. Take out the ZSD as well. Keep the charge going forwards. My Ihawk here did manage to get its radar missiles off, but is now under artillery fire. Got MiG-21 coming in. Going to be going for some missiles onto the Abrams. Fails to get the job done. Does get shot down as well, thanks to those Rolands. Another MiG-21 coming in and failing. I was getting, I don't know if I would say lucky that those weren't doing the job. Generally those MiG-21s have pretty terrible accuracy. But my Abrams are making great progress right now. They're really managing to get up onto this hill. And with that, I'm deciding to bring in a command unit that can potentially capture the Echo, or at least counter cap, so that we can make that neutral and therefore get a +1 advantage. Chaparral there reloading, going to be moving it forwards there. The Vulcan to take out the MI2, get rid of some of that recon so that I can then move up the TACOM squad into the region, into Echo. I think the Abrams there did manage to pick off one of the T-80s at least, which was nice. More T-80s though on our right flank, which is not great. Motosturki are going to be spotting the TACOM squad, and so the Mi-24P gets its rockets on, and, well, goodbye to that unit. Maybe a little bit premature that I pushed up the command when I did. The M106s though going to be going ahead and helping out with some mortar fire there. I move up the Vulcan to try and get rid of the Mi-24. That's the reason that I pulled back all of the M1 Abrams, because although I did still have all these M1 Abrams alive, the helicopter there with no counter would actually just kill them all. So I had to be really, really careful. And now we've got the MiG-21s coming in. They're going to be stunning my M1 Abrams. And I've lost all of my support units, so I'm really quite blind. I'm getting RT'd. Just my push here got absolutely wasted by a team attempt, or the counter-team effort, I guess, in pushing back this push. So this is really what I was lacking on my side, was units like the Pachongsu. These like really cheap infantry. You can't ignore them. That is a big old bomb coming in there and wasting one of my M1 Abrams. This M1 Abrams not having a good time against the T-80 at distance there, gets weapon jammed. I'm just trying to use the ridge to break line of sight for the most part. This M1 Abrams is actually out of fuel, so that's not having a great time. I'm not sure I had range to fire back. I think the T-80s, yeah, they have 2,275 meter range, whilst my M1 Abrams only has 2,100 meter range. So that's a little bit of a downside to this engagement for me. Although the M1 Abrams do have reasonable damage for their cost. Ultimately, the T-80s have a better main gun. Much better main gun than the M1 Abrams, but the rate of fire of the Abrams can be very nice, and if you get close enough it doesn't really matter. So that's kind of the idea of using the Abrams, and those MiGs, they're going to come in, pick off a couple more. These MiGs are really, really nasty. One of them does go down, the second one goes down as well, and I called that a good trade in the end. These are 65-point tanks, those two aircrafts, probably close to about the same, but yeah. Taking some aircraft down is always nice. They're much more limited in supply than my tanks are. So I'm going to be bringing up some more Abrams and some more MBT-70s, and hopefully getting the job done this time around. My Rangers here, I feel like maybe I needed to have like a Ranger unit move up with me and try and get into one of these tree lines, but probably would have just suffered the same fate as the command unit. Like back here, I was hoping this would be able to spot as much as I needed it to. But incoming artillery gonna be hitting me hard. My M48 Chaparral is taking quite a lot of damage there. And now I'm gonna be under pressure from the left-hand side. Just trying to get a couple of US Marines in here to lead the charge against the T-80s. Now there's T-80Bs in my way. The M1 Abrams aren't really going to cut it against them, but I will of course be trying my best. The MBT-70 going to be opening up onto the T-62s. The ITV also having a go there, just try and break them down. Su-7B coming in with some rockets. Not going to do too much damage. Does manage to turn and get a lovely snipe there onto my AA though. My Eagle not quite in the sky in time. HGMs constantly missing. I was just getting so unlucky with these HGMs in this game. These ITVs are supposed to be really good. Well, not really good, but you know, good enough to actually hit a missile every once in a while. But in this game, they just weren't. Now, the MBT-70 is actually pretty nice for dealing with infantry like this because it does have the autocannon as well as the main guns, so it can chew these up quite nicely. These T-62s though, I've got to make sure that I kill them off. I'm trying to get my Abrams to kind of pincer them from both sides, whilst the MBT holds them off at sort of minimum range. My Rangers there get a lovely shot on the side though. Turn off the machine gun on the Rangers on purpose so they start using their Gustav more. And while the Thunderbolt's going to be coming in here, getting some beautiful kills for us. We're even going to go for a strafing run onto those Bachongsu. You gotta love the sound of that Avenger there. Beautiful. The Avenger is the name of the minigun on the front of that. Alright, US Marines, they have managed to make some ground, but this M72 Lord that they have isn't particularly great for taking on TATBs. You can see my Abrams just getting chewed up, unfortunately, on the approach. My mortars really did help out a lot throughout the game, though. They were definitely helping me pin down things and keep those T-80s on the back foot. These Abrams, yeah, playing with fire there on 1 health. I shouldn't have been sending forwards that one, at least. Big mistake. Any that got that low, you should always try and pull them back so you can fix them up. It gives you way better value. But I got the MBT-70s here, sitting at range. Unfortunately, I don't have any AA with my M1 Abrams, so the Mi-24D here is doing a lot of damage. Trying to get this Vulcan to move up in the Chaparral, but they're just a little bit too far away. AH-1S Cobra trying to move up as well. Could potentially try and engage the Mi-24D, but the Mi-24D just has way more health, so the AH-1S Cobra probably wouldn't last too long. Oh, and a book there. Going to be shooting that out the sky. I do manage to kill that with the MBTs, so that was a nice kill. Making some good ground here. Had to move forwards the MBTs to avoid the artillery fire. Now engaging those Chongsu. These tanks are pretty nice. I think they're really good sort of mid-range US tanks. Just fantastic against enemy infantry, but yeah, the T-80's up on the ridge again, managing to catch out my M1 Abrams. And I think that was just the main problem I was having, was the M1 Abrams have such a hard time dealing with T-80s unless they can like really get close enough to do the damage and also outnumber them. Because of course the closer you get to a T-80, the more damage it's going to be doing to you as well. So it's really quite tough. These HGMs, the hot ones, trying to get the job done. Just missing every single one. Classic HGMs from this period. Not the most reliable, apparently. Unfortunate. Anyway, we do see that on this side, Genjeft and Crow Warrior have made some ground, and Crow Warrior's managed to get a BMP into Bravo, so we are currently bleeding points to the enemy. They have the +1 advantage, whilst I try and continue to make ground into Echo. And you'd think, with it not working once or twice, that I might give up on a third time, but nope. We're going to be doing it all over again. I think in the meantime, a couple of my M106s did get hit by counter battery eventually. I was doing a good job of dodging it, but in the end it caught up with me, and the counter battery got the kill. And my 24Ds still proving an issue. I had brought in loads of these Vulcans and Chaparrals, but they just hadn't really been doing the job for me. And my Vulcan here going to be able to get the shots on target this time around and save my M1. So that worked out nicely. Yeah, I'm getting low on number in these Chaparrals and Vulcans, that's for sure, at this point in the game. And now the Conkers being moved up onto the ridge just makes things even more difficult. 1980s for the Soviets is actually a really good time period for them, because they do have units like these, the Conkers. These aren't Conkers M's, so they're not fantastic, but they're still relatively good. And all of their tanks, they have that 4 HE power and really quite high AP power. So, you know, they have like quite an advantage in that regard. My Vulcan here gonna get annihilated by those mortars. So I think I did bring in like a couple of fresh mortars here. They're going to be reloaded. Well, these are the old ones, these are the new ones. The old ones are going to get repaired and reloaded by the Super Chinook. I've got an M577 CPC here. The plan with this was to try and get it into Echo, again to try and contest it once again. And since the infantry got spotted and killed quite easily, I was hoping that like an armoured command would maybe do a little bit better next time around. I've also managed to move these Rangers up here this time around. So with a little bit more recon information closer up, I can spot things coming in on my flank, like these T-80Bs. Did have to evac my Super Chinook as it comes under artillery fire. Basically, because my mortars were firing from this position previously, the Super Chinook landed exactly where the counter battery was targeted. We're going to try and get rid of these T-80Bs, at least make them panicked and damage them as much as I can with my mortar fire. The MBT-70s failing on their HGMs as they lose line of sight. And we are back to even on income in terms of conquest score, but our opponents currently have 81 points and we have 26. Now in Wargame Dragon, you do have the 40-minute time limit. Well, you can set a time limit, you can have no time limit, I think, as well. But basically, generally games are default 40 minutes, and in this case that is the case. There's 8 minutes and 35 seconds left on the clock. We don't really need that many points to win. You just got to hold a CV in one of these opposing sectors for a little bit of time, and that's pretty much job done. I do find this map quite interesting because it is, I think, pretty much symmetrical. And that can make things actually quite difficult, because you can see that both teams are basically set up on either side of this main road that goes all the way through the middle. And yeah, trying to get across here every time I was just being countered. Maybe if I was like pushing into Lima, the rest of the enemy team wouldn't have noticed so much when I was making those pushes. But every time I was pushing into Echo, I think I was kind of invoking the wrath of both Olibol and also Stashman here. And then Stashman might be pinging like Genjeft, who's paying attention, and then he comes in with his aircraft as well. So it's very difficult for me because I kept making these pushes, but I just couldn't keep the momentum enough to get any ground. And my LVTP is now coming in with all its infantry, but another one gets popped in its transport by the Conker's HGMs. So now T-64A's going to be making a bit of a push here. I did manage to get a nice side shot there from the Sheridan with the HGM. Chaparral's going to be trying to take down the helicopter there. Is successful in doing so. Thunderbolt trying to get some rockets off. Let's use all of its HGM, sorry, in trying to kill off as many of those as possible. Abrams here, one of them does take a side shot, unfortunately, but managing to pick them off slowly but surely. But now Stashman coming over with his T-62s as well. The Olibol making the initial move with the T-64As, and now Stashman moving in with the T-62s. It's just very difficult for me to deal with two sets of players pushing on me like this after having failed a couple of pushes previously. A-10 Thunderbolt, beautifully done, absolutely annihilates the remaining tanks on this side, but massive counter push now coming. The T-62s making their push. They're backed up by the Spags. Aardvark though, coming in with the bombing strike. That's going to be getting a juicy amount of kills. M1 Abrams does have the optical failure there, so it's just YOLOing forwards. I do have this M1 Abrams further back that was originally covering the left side there, so that's going to be able to deal with a couple of these T-62s. And I've also got the M1 Abrams on this side that are able to come in on the flank. So we're not in a terrible position. It's just, like, I know I'm going to be able to push this back eventually, but it's whether or not they manage to get a command into this sector that I'm worried about. Kind of like when I was making a push here and trying to get some command in. But with them pushing on the left-hand side, I decided that I might as well continue with this push on the right-hand side with the US Marines and the Pechongsu. So I'm trying to get my command into Echo temporarily, just to counter-cap that, maybe put it in a position where it's not going to get spotted so easy. But there is still plenty of stuff in Echo that's kind of sniping my units every now and then. Another Thunderbolt coming in. Looking for the T-62 there. Unfortunately, couldn't quite get a line of sight. Those Spags gonna be forcing me to move the Thunderbolt away. Yak comes in there. Does get the napalm onto the M1 Abrams. Eagle gets the kill. My M577 CPC is behind the hill now, which is great. We are starting to get some points on the board, but there isn't really much to back it up, unfortunately. There's missiles again coming in from the Eagle. They're trying to go for the MiG-23. Abrams just sat in napalm, unfortunately. It does mean that the T-62 actually does get the better of it. Not good for me at all. Going to be bringing up some LVTP-7s. They are covered by the M1 Abrams on this side, so I am able to move up a bit more. Those HGMs going straight into that T-62, looking for this one as well. Again, not really having much line of sight there, and I also do need to be wary of the AA that sat in these trees. My opponent pretty much knows where these are at this point, where my command is. He just spotted it there with the T-34-85. So loads of artillery coming in. They probably already suspected it was there anyway. I managed to briefly save it with the A-10 Thunderbolt, but yeah, unfortunately I'm going to have to back off with that command, and I couldn't really get enough points to even bring things back to even. But the Thunderbolt did a great job of picking off the rest of those units there. Aardvark now coming in with cluster bombs onto this forest area. Basically looking for some kills onto those AA. US Marines there get the job done. So those US Marines, they're kind of just going across the top of this mountain there, using the cover to try and get towards this area. Because again, the last thing I wanted was them to sneak in a command here on the left-hand side. But only 2 minutes and 30 seconds left. I can't really move up until this hill is cleared, so potentially I could try and mortar it, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to try and push them off there so that I can get the command back up on top. Susong Po's now pushing forwards though, and I think at this point I was also very low on tanks, so I was forced to bring in the M60. Most of the M1 Abrams had been killed off. Lynx AH-1 tow from Kaiser Landau, very welcome on this side. Definitely used up all of his HGMs there trying to give us a hand. But now in comes the artillery, and well, it finally hits the mark onto our command at probably the worst point in the game. 1 minute and 35 seconds left on the clock. They managed to pretty much secure the victory there by that command unit going down. We'll watch the Thunderbolt come in one last time. Takes out one of those HGMs. We can ignore that wonky flying there. It's just so good. It's such a good weapon system, those Maverick HGMs. The US Marines moving in there. Originally, I thought that they'd put a command in here. I was so worried about that, I hadn't even realized for a little while that this command had actually been killed. That was pretty rough. And yeah, just not really enough time to bring in another M577 CPC, and the one over here had died in the meantime. I think to one of these Susongpo missiles. So yeah, hard times. Oh, check out that maneuver. The barrel roll HGM release. Gotta love it. These are the mortars there. Gonna be picking all of those off. They were giving me hell throughout the game, so quite happy to get rid of those. There we have it. It's funny how things really just get silent at the end of a war game sometimes, and this is one of those games. Eagle comes in for a bit of a strafing run there, but yep, that's it. The whole 40 minutes. And GG. We unfortunately lose out. We actually have more kills than our opponents. I managed to go positive just about with 3,550 kills to 3,215 losses, and Holly got 4,200 kills to 2,335 losses. Holly's a pretty decent player, so to be expected, I think. Kaiser Rondal and Taki, unfortunately, not having the best of games. But nice job by Crow Warrior there. Really did a lot of damage with his deck. The M1 Abrams, they did okay. I mean, like this one in particular, killed 2 T-80s, all of this extra stuff as well here. I think the main issue that I was having was having to deal with the Soviet player and the North Korean player at the same time, which kind of meant that my Abrams in a lot of cases were getting overwhelmed, or I just didn't really have enough stuff to deal with it all. The A-10 Thunderbolts really made up for a lot of my shortcomings, that's for sure. We got loads of kills with those Thunderbolts throughout the game, which was awesome to see. But yeah, the initial Abrams did really well, but I couldn't really continue the momentum into that sector and therefore bring back the game. But yeah, it was definitely a fun one. Get to see the M1 Abrams charge forwards in style and die in flames. But yeah, it was good fun. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.